troublemaking, controversial, quote-unquote controversial, it's not that controversial to me, but a new Bitcoiner who's coming out and starting to talk on Twitter, making videos, etc., and that is at @Kruger. So Fred, unbeknownst to me for a long time, was on Clubhouse when British Hodl was unknown as well. And Fred was on Clubhouse and listening and talking, etc., and then we reconnected again very, very recently because our views basically align on who the new buyer of Bitcoin is and what these ETFs open up. So Fred invited me to have a conversation, and a cigar. He's also a cigar fan. He invited me to have a video after the ETF was approved because he saw exactly what I saw, which is BlackRock's filed, this thing is pretty much done. And so I want to give you a glimpse of this conversation. The point about this conversation that's very important is for you to realize who the new buyer of Bitcoin is. Because there's a lot of people right now, as the price is fluctuating around because of the ETF, people are saying, oh, people are just speculating, etc. The price has come down, the supply has hit the market, and now the type of buyer that is now buying up the Bitcoin is completely different to the type of buyer that it was. BlackRock's ETF alone has double the market, 482% more in terms of dollars than El Salvador completely. And they're not planning on letting go of that Bitcoin, right? They're building their position, they're forcefully building their position on a daily basis. So enjoy this conversation. Follow along. Please subscribe, because the faster you subscribe, the faster the algorithm gets hit to tell people, okay, this is the new thing, that the new type of buyer that's coming to Bitcoin, and it's important to be aware of so you can secure your position as we enter this new world of Bitcoin post ETF. So enjoy this conversation, and the main thing to take out of this is the new type of buyer that is coming into Bitcoin and the reality of that new type of buyer, because I continue to believe that all these young kids that have got Bitcoin, and all these happy hippies that have got Bitcoin, all these $1,000 net worthers that have got Bitcoin and are holding up the flag of Bitcoin, are going to get their Bitcoin taken from them by boomers in the next 5 years. So enjoy this conversation, and ultimately remember, there's always only 3 steps to Bitcoin. Step number 1, you buy Bitcoin. Step number 2, you shut the fuck up. And step number 3, you get fabulously wealthy. Let's get to the conversation.
All right, guys, as promised, I'm with the legend, British Hodl, the man which he was known for his cigars even before he came on video. You were talking about them in Clubhouse, I remember.
Yeah, I love cigars. It's one of the things that has been a point of connection for me with other people and for myself, and I just want a second to think and relax.
So what are you smoking? What are you smoking?
I'm smoking a Cuban Partagas Lusitania, which is one of my favorite cigars. This doesn't have too much age on it. It's from 2020, but this is one of my favorite cigars.
I've had Dominican Partagas. I've never had a Cuban Partagas.
Wow.
How is it?
See you, I'll bring you one.
Yeah.
What are you smoking?
I'm smoking a Davidoff Toro Millennium.
Okay.
It's a nice cigar.
Is that a late? Is that a late hour edition, or what is that? Because I don't really know much about Davidoff.
These cigars are, the actor George Hamilton. Mm-hmm. He's kind of behind this brand to some extent.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's turned into kind of, in America, it's kind of one of the premium cigars you can get. You know what I mean? Like the cigar store that I shop in, which is kind of where everybody shops in LA, in sort of West LA, which is this Lone Wolf cigar place. This is kind of their premium cigar. It's a $30 cigar. It's a good cigar.
I've never managed to get on with, I don't know, is that a Nicaraguan or a Dominican?
So this one's actually, the paper is Ecuador.
Interesting, okay.
And I think it's the Nicaraguan, I think it's a Dominican tobacco with a Ecuadorian wrapper.
I've never managed to get on with Dominican tobacco. I don't know what it is. Like Arturo Fuente, Opus X's, like...
Oh yeah, you don't like those? Yeah.
I just hate them,
Yeah.
But then again, I was brought up tasting Cubans, so my flavor profile is very, very specific to the Cuban flavor. But I do like Nicaraguans, though. I like Padrones.
Okay, so let's talk about today. Today, how, on a scale of 1 to 10, how surprised were you about the money coming in, the result, etc.? What do you think?
If I'm being honest, I think every Bitcoiner was, including myself and yourself probably, I don't want to speak for you, was hoping for a straight candle up, right? We were hoping for a straight green candle to the heavens. And that was never really going to be reality of the whole thing, right? And so we might have hoped for it, but it's never going to be reality, which is why any prediction that I've ever made, it's always been, I think we'll get $3.5 billion worth of net inflows in the first week. And if that happens, I think the price will be $57,000 to $62,000 in the first week. And so the only way I can evaluate the predictions I made is next Thursday, after close of business next Thursday. So I'll be looking to see what happens, you know, tomorrow and into the next week. I think overall it's been a disappointing day for Bitcoiners because, again, the green candle didn't show up straight to heaven. But overall, like, we've just... I'm shocked with, like, Bitcoiners are acting like on Twitter that this is a failed event at this point. This is the most important event for this asset since its inception.
I totally agree. And you know, it's sort of like the same Bitcoiners who are saying that don't actually have brokerage accounts. You know what I mean? I don't want to call them out, but they don't. You know what I mean? It's like they're like, okay, what about these? Where do you buy these ETFs? I'm like, do you have a brokerage account?
Yeah, I have a name.
The reality is they don't have stock. They don't have any assets really, other than this Bitcoin.
Yeah,
that's it.
Listen, I call them $1,000 net worthers for a reason.
Yeah.
You know, like at the end of the day, like this asset is not for the Bitcoiner that's on Twitter who's managed to put, you know, a couple $1,000 into Bitcoin, and it's the first asset that they really played around with. This day is for the trillions of dollars that are being managed that now have the opportunity to start moving.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just the first day. Like, of course, we wanted to get a straight candle up, but it's just the first day. The next 10 years, the next 15 years are going to be phenomenal for Bitcoin. And this is
I'll tell you what I've noticed is I got a few calls today from some Wall Street guys, and they're like, you know, Fred, I was kind of like skeptical, but you were right. You were visionary. You know what I mean? So everybody's like, they view this as a total legitimization of the space, and doesn't mean they bought today, you know, but it just means that, oh my God, this is actually now something I should even worry about. You can even pay attention to, right? They were never thinking ever of buying something on Coinbase. Most of them. That just was not in, and now they're going to do it. You know, they're going to test it out because it's so easy. You know.
Yeah, that's the one thing I was thinking about this actually. Like, okay, let's say $3.5 billion. I'm right, and $3.5 billion in net inflows come in the first week. How many more hundreds of millions or billions come in as an ancillary to the marketing that the ETF providers will do this week? Right? Like, how many people go to Coinbase and go, let me chuck in, 10 grand and see what happens now that BlackRock is promoting this thing? What do you think?
I think it's sort of different pools of capital, right? So I think, and sort of judging for myself, I don't move money that easily between like a brokerage account and Coinbase. You know what I mean? I did it. It was painful. It was like, But, when you're dealing with brokerage accounts, sometimes you'll close a brokerage account and you'll open another brokerage account. You know what I mean? So, I remember in the great financial crisis, I was worried that E-Trade was going to go under, right? And I couldn't, I was like, oh my God, I got all this money in E-Trade. It's about to go bust, And it really looked like it was going to go bust, Yeah. And so I got my money out of E-Trade and that's when I opened a Schwab account, right, for that, Yeah. But for sort of my active trading. But like, it's not sort of a normal thing to move vast quantities of money between in and out of brokerage accounts. You tend to stick with your brokerage account, right?
Yes.
And I think that's just normal behavior.
Yeah.
And so I think, people have money on Coinbase. It's either in Tether or it's in just, USD balances, right? But they're not going to be moving money in and out of between a brokerage account and Coinbase. So I kind of feel like that pool of money, it may be not fully allocated yet to Bitcoin. And yeah, they may decide to go more, right? But I think the real money is all this money and all this managed money that's completely out of the system right now, right? Most people that I talk to most rich people that I know do not own Bitcoin. That's just the reality of it, And they don't own Bitcoin, and they've never really even thought of even ever buying Bitcoin. It's never really.
They're comfortable, right? Like, good is the enemy of great. We all know this. Like, once you're comfortable, you've got the car that you always wanted, you've got the house that you always wanted, your kids are good. Like, you've got a property portfolio that's making you, I don't know, $20,000 or $30,000 a month. Like, you don't really have to worry about it until someone tells you. And then you hear these couple of crazy guys on Twitter and YouTube and these lunatics is talking about this new thing, and it's the most scariest thing on earth until someone like Larry Fink says, hey, by the way, Bitcoin's a good idea.
Right, exactly. But I think to me, I think it may take even a month, to really kind of digest what just happened. Because I was at this Swan event yesterday, and I said, look, I think the Bitcoiners don't understand the impact of the finance guys. And I also think the finance guys, they really aren't itching to buy Bitcoin right now, That it's sort of an asset that they don't really trust, And, look, if you're at Vanguard or you're at Merrill, they're saying, do not trust this asset. We don't carry it for your own benefit. It's sort of like, we're helping you out by not providing this.
How ridiculous is that, by the way? I got a phone call from a friend who I had actually met on Clubhouse a few years ago, and he said, British, you're not going to fucking believe what's going on here. They won't allow us to execute any trades on any of these spot Bitcoin ETFs, and it's our internal compliance department. Yeah. So I put that tweet out there and the video out there, and suddenly everyone else started talking about it because it came out as Vanguard and Merrill Lynch. This is absolute nuts. This is basically, lining up the big boys to secure their Bitcoin positions, and then we can let little old retail into the market. So it looks like the Selden news event was really a Selden launch event, and at the same time, the pre-launch preparation that everyone thought that they were doing basically started today.
Right, I agree. And what do you think do you think the SEC screw up had any impact on today? In terms of just people just got nervous, they're just like, oh, what the fuck?
I know it had an impact yesterday. Because I saw James and Eric tweet out copies of the pictures of the documents, and then the SEC's website was down, and Bloomberg and CNBC didn't dare talk about it until the SEC's site was back up and a press release was out, which they did start talking about it the day before, just based off of a tweet. So I know it had an impact there. I think it certainly helped volatility. I think the volatility could have been a lot worse if that had not happened. Which then makes me put my conspiracy hat on and go, well, was it a screw up, or was it a game plan to calm the markets down a little bit earlier?
Yeah, I don't think it was a screw up, but I think I don't know. I have no idea really what went on, but
at the end of the day, it was stupid, right? Like, how do you not have a two-factor authentication on a U.S. government agency Twitter account?
Especially that one.
Especially the one that's telling people to make sure that they have two-factor authentication on their stuff. So yeah, today I think it's been an interesting day. Certainly, the Bitcoiners who were expecting a straight candle up are going to be disappointed. I dealt with that by going for a 90-minute deep tissue massage just before this. So Yeah, like it's just we'll just wait and see what happens at the end of the day. The good thing is it's live. Can you believe a year ago no one was talking about the fact that an ETF was coming?
Well, I'll tell you something. Even forget a year ago. I've seen a couple. I ran a poll on my Twitter, and 20% of the people didn't think that the ETF would happen. 20%. Okay.
Like recently?
Yeah, like last week.
Holy shit.
Okay, 20%. Then I was on this other group that I'm in, very elite group, and I mean, you know, I don't want to say names, but big names in crypto and influencers were like, nope, not happening.
Crazy.
And so I kind of feel like we're in this almost suspended disbelief. It almost feels like it didn't actually happen. I'm sort of convincing myself to like, did it actually happen or not? I don't know, you know. And so I think there's a lot of people that just can't quite get over the fact that this actually happened, right? And this is really, I mean, this is even when the SEC's language, which was so guarded, right? Like, we're allowing this, but we hate it, you know. Oh, by the way, here's 10 rules for you not to invest in crypto. And oh, we're allowing Bitcoin, but just this is a one asset. It's a one-off, you know. But you know, now people are saying, oh yeah, the ETH ETF's coming out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know about that. Joe Carlosari, a friend of mine, and I think a friend of yours as well,
Yeah.
was saying it's coming out in the summer. And I don't know. I think he might be as accurate on that as he was about his TLT call options about a year and a half ago.
I remember those.
Which
Yeah.
wasn't accurate at all. So yeah,
No.
I don't know.
Well, he also just to ding on Joe just a little bit, so we can roast Joe a little bit because he's roastable. You know, he was like, Fred, this is going to be there's going to be no demand for this. Well, I'll tell you, the no demand, the largest ETF volume ever is not a no demand day. Okay, this is not limp biscuit. Okay, there was some serious volume today, whatever you want to say, and it wasn't all just people selling GBTC and buying IBIT either. You know, I don't think that. I think that there was a lot of people outright selling GBTC. That's what I think.
Yeah.
You know, it was interesting. I met this gentleman last night, and I was talking to him, and he was a GBTC holder, and he was sort of like, yeah, I really just want to get back to my break even on GBTC.
It's
you know, and I'm sort of sitting there going, wait a second, we're at 46. And then I realized the guy must have bought in 2021.
Yeah.
You know, and the reality is, if you bought at a 20% premium, you know, and you could have bought at 30,000.
Right.
You know, you're still in the red. You're still in the red right now, right? So I think maybe today is like the first day that some of these guys actually got, you know, to being in profit over 2 years, right?
A snippet of money. Yeah, that's an interesting point. There's definitely going to be people who are so fed up by. I think that's the one disadvantage of the ETF, holding the ETF versus holding the actual thing. Holding the actual thing actually forces you to learn about what it is and learn about the value of it and what it's meant to be. Holding the ETF, again, it just turns into another ticker symbol on your portfolio. So, which is, by the way, as I've been saying for a while, like, that's what's going to happen, because that's what happens with every asset, right? Nobody. Find me any real estate investor that also holds VNQ that can tell you what's in VNQ. Right?
Yeah.
It's not too many of us. There's probably 100 people on earth that can do that. So, you know, it's unfortunate, but that's probably what's gonna happen. Like, people are just gonna, you know, buy it and sell it and whenever they want to and get emotional with it.
Well, I mean, look, you know, to take the real estate analogy, right? You know, I've never owned any commercial real estate, right? But I've owned EOP, you know? I've owned Voronado Trust. I remember in 2008, 2009, that was my number one best pick, was Voronado, right? Because that thing was yielding like 13, 14%. That was the dividend yield of Voronado, right? You could buy these things, these REITs were paying you 12, 13, 14%, you know? And I was just like, okay, this thing is it's prime New York real estate, and I can get in. Now, I think the difference is when you own a REIT, you make money. It's so easy, so tempting to go click, click, and it's a lot more difficult to sell a piece of real estate. You know what I mean? Yep. And I think the same is true psychologically with you've got some Bitcoin in cold storage. That extra barrier, it's not enormous, but that extra barrier of sending it to your favorite exchange, wherever you're going to sell it, right? That pushes a little bit of extra pressure from you just saying, fuck it, sell,
Yeah, I mean, I had to create that pressure for myself. My Bitcoin is all in multi-sig with Casa. I use Casa to do mine. And it's in 3 different countries. So if I want to move it, I got to fly to 3 different places and then have a fucking phone call interview with Casa to actually move the damn thing.
So I'm also a Casa customer. Okay. I like Casa a lot. I think they've done a great, I would sort of recommend.
Yeah.
I like Casa. I think they're good. I love their process. I think the product is very slick, I've tried some of the other processes as well. But yeah, I think for me also it was like, I didn't want my Bitcoin to be too movable, because when I bought it was like, okay, this is going to be a super long-term position. Not forever, but it's going to be a super long-term position. Yeah. And, I'm pretty okay with it being very difficult to move, So,
it's unfortunate that you have to create that, right? Like I'm paying $2,100 a year to create the difficulty.
Yeah.
And that's, I'm intrigued to see what they do with their pricing structure and everything else. Now they've got ETF competition. Basically, if you have under $1 million a holding, it's cheaper to use the ETF than to use Casa and go through all the additional. So if I was to actually talk about I'm using Casa, I'm paying them $2,100 a year for the service. Mm-hmm. And then if I talk about the places where the keys are stored, it's probably $5,500 a year of total costs.
I think I might even be paying more than that, to be honest. But you can get to get the 3 out of 5. I think it's something like that. That's good.
Well, my additional 3.5 is coming from paying in the jurisdictions where the keys are, the security for those keys.
Right.
So yeah, my bill with Casa is $2,100. But even then, USD, why I have been thinking about okay, what is the advantage and the disadvantage of just moving my Bitcoin into
So let's go over the disadvantages. A lot of people have asked me that as well. What do you see as advantages and disadvantages? So
the advantages is very simple. And again, I do own a significant amount of GBTC too as a part of the portfolio because I saw this coming. The advantage is very simple. The payment rails and the lending rails that are already built into a brokerage account are now going to be basically accessible through the ETFs, right? So I'll be able to pretty soon, the options even haven't started yet on these products, right? That's coming soon too.
Do you have any idea when?
I would probably say in the next month you'll have options.
Okay.
Right? Okay. And then you've got these lending solutions that are going to be coming out in the next, I don't know, I would say in the next 5 years, there'll be solid lending solutions against your Bitcoin ETF. Right. And in that scenario, I mean, to take a loan against Unchained, you've got a rate of, I don't know, friends of mine that have done it, it's 8 to 14%.
Right.
You'll be able to do it at Fed rates pretty much with the ETF. So
well, you can also do margin buying, right?
Right. So you got that. You've got the fact that there's no $5 renter tax on an ETF.
Yeah.
You've got the fact that you can have certain structures set up, legal and tax efficient structures set up that will probably be more easier with an ETF than actually the quote unquote physical Bitcoin.
Right.
So yeah, those are the advantages to me.
I say another one on the ETF side. Yeah. And Casa's got a pretty good, I don't know if you signed up for this level, but the last level of Casa has all this kind of estate planning stuff, right? Yeah. Which is great for me. I needed something that, I can pass on.
What are you worried about that for? How old are you? Look at you still got hair. What are we talking about? I should be signing up for that.
They give you a discount. Bald guys get a discount.
So yeah, like the inheritance planning stuff is cool. I agree. That's eventually I will have to progress onto that if I'm,
Yeah.
you know.
So I think on the disadvantage, one of the things is jurisdiction, right? You never know when it's going to be more difficult to get, you know. I think having a like a CASA type thing, if you have to move somewhere or you have to leave your country or whatever, big advantage, right? So if you're mobile, I kind of like the idea of having actually being a little closer to the actual coins, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a cool thing. Yeah, I think just sort of.
You planning on leaving the United States anytime soon?
No,
Yeah. So that's a
I'm not. It's a different thing for me. I'm not. Look, I'm not moving around. I'm here. But you know, if I was in, if I was in Ukraine,
they probably want the CASA set up, right?
you might want the CASA set up. You know what I mean? Yeah. You know, you never know. Like you're in Argentina, they might pass a wealth tax law or something, right? You know, you may you may be you may have to get out of Dodge in a hurry, right?
Yeah.
If you need to get out of Dodge in a hurry, nothing like kind of your own custody. That's the best. And a lot of people, I think, are in that. Let's suppose let's say you've got some money. You don't have to have tons of money, but you're in Africa, right?
Yeah. Kind
of unstable, right? There's countries that they can go, Congo, whatever, you know, some mercenary from, you know, Wagner group takes power, you know, all of a sudden your bank is closed. You have stuff in your bank. Okay, that's no longer your money in your bank. You know what I mean? So I definitely, and I think that's kind of like, that's fundamentally the reason why Bitcoin's great, because it's, you know, it is self-sovereign money, right? That you can take anywhere. It's, you know, you can leave the country in 24 hours. You can leave South America in 24 hours and go to Iceland.
Yeah.
And you can survive, right?
Yeah.
Not a problem, right? And I think that optionality is worth a lot, right? That optionality.
Even if we weren't talking about like the need to get out of Dodge really quickly, like even if you wanted like the speed of capital to move really quickly for whatever reason, let's say you were doing business here, there, and everywhere. Yeah. I think there's advantage in having some self-custody Bitcoin, because you can send it. You can basically start causing problems wherever you want to cause them, right? You can send it, and within, you know, technically within 10 minutes, your capital and your energy can be in the place affecting whichever direction you want it to move in. I think that's a huge advantage. I think a lot of people, it's funny, the conversation that I hear about the privacy and the I don't want the government to do this and this, that, and the other, mainly comes from people who don't own too much Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is not a conversation that people with more than 10 coins are having, generally in my experience, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think everyone's got to think about their own needs. I think that people with less money typically are more worried about what's going on around them. They're definitely more susceptible to the doom and gloom boomer bullshit that I've seen all over the place. And that's, you know, one of the things I love about what I don't know, maybe I should create a new name, the happy boomers, is that happy boomers, like, you know, just want to live a good life, live comfortably. And especially if you're in America, which is where like 80% of my audience is, you're in the most secure capital markets in the world. You know, you're not in some middle of Africa or middle of Asia or middle of South America place. So
one of the things I posted about, which on the same topic, is that, you know, there's all this kind of, again, doom and gloom, like stuff on the deficit, and, you know, it's going to blow up, and, you know, and I remember hearing that kind of stuff back in 1987. You know what I mean? You know, literally, I remember, you know, Blackstone wrote this, you know, Pete Peterson from Blackstone wrote this book about the impending debt crisis. We're all going to die. Of course, the debt quadrupled since then. Not a problem. But like we have a way in the kind of mature financial world of kind of going through this stuff. Like I'd have to say, if my best case, my most probable case is 10 years from now, it's not going to be Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, and it's not going to be 30% inflation or hyperinflation or the Weimar Republic inflation. We're not going to be taking dollars in wheelbarrows. I don't think America is going to become the next Argentina. Now, a lot of Bitcoiners will be like, yeah, but Argentina used to be rich, and it's like, America is a little different than that, right?
Slightly different.
Slightly different.
We've got a slightly bigger military, from what I hear.
Mm-hmm. And look, the system does kind of work. So, if I had to bet, I would say, headline inflation it may go up a touch, but it's not going to go up it's not going to be in the double digits for that long, if it even gets there again, And right now we're getting, so I just think that's not the reason to be in Bitcoin, right? I don't think you need to be in Bitcoin for that, right? I think a good reason to be in Bitcoin is it's a better version of gold, right? And gold sort of fulfilled a need, right, for self-sovereign money that you can take with you and all the same advantages. And now we have a better version. It's called Bitcoin. It's better than gold.
That's the reach that people are having, and I think that narrative will change in the next 5 years. So this will be better than real estate.
I agree with that eventually, right? I totally agree. We got to get to the point, because there's so many real estate investors. And one thing that I loved about your podcast, you really touched on that really early. Back in the Clubhouse days, you were saying that, right?
Yeah.
You were like, look, this is the property market stuff. That's going to be a longer cycle, right? Because we got to get to those guys actually starting selling their properties, and like your parents, right? We got to get to your parents thinking, you know what? Maybe I can just take this digital thing and put it in my brokerage. But like, this is step one of that, right? But I do think.
Say something. I had a conversation with my parents after this ETF got approved for the second time.
What did they say?
In 2 days, and they literally said, we don't think that we would ever need to think about buying another property ever again.
Really?
Because they finally understand it, right? They finally seen what it was about the ETF. Again, their son can be a fucking British hodl, but they still need Larry Fink to tell them that this is a good idea, right?
Right.
This is what it is. So I think they saw that it got approved, and now you've got all these institutions behind it. CNBC's talking about it, Bloomberg's talking about it, and it suddenly, everything that I told them that would happen in 2020 suddenly just all of a sudden became true, right?
Right.
And if I'm experiencing that with my parents,
right,
I can't even imagine what so many young Bitcoiners that have been trying to bang their parents' heads against the wall for the last 4 years have just experienced now in the next, today in the next few weeks.
Definitely.
So I think that property narrative is going to shift a lot faster. The good thing about real estate is that a lot of these real estate gurus have managed to get people who want to make money into real estate. And people that want to make money, I can trust people that want to make money because they're very rational people,
mm-hmm.
right? People that are emotionally in love with an asset like gold, I can't really trust that person. Because no matter what I tell you, you're still going to want to hug your gold bricks. So, the rationality of real estate investors, I think, is gonna help them make the pivot to Bitcoin. And remember, as soon as options get activated on these ETF products, Bitcoin is now a cash flow generating asset.
Right.
Right.
You can
sell covered calls against it.
You can start absolutely right. And those covered calls are going to be, by the way, very, very profitable, because when you're dealing with 40, 50 vols, or maybe 80 vol, where it's going to be, right? You're going to get an enormous yield if you're willing to give up your long tail, your long tail result. So,
well, even if you don't give up your long tail result, and you can still generate, an extra 15 or 20% a year without giving up the long side of it, like,
what are we talking about? This
Right.
is nuts. This is nuts.
Well, and also, look, these real estate guys, the way I saw it is, we had this huge boom in real estate. All my friends they were all in stocks, and then after the dot-com crash, everybody kind of got into real estate, right?
Yep.
And everybody and their brother and their, obviously it's like The Big Short, right? But everybody was like renovating houses and flipping them and all that, right? And then we saw this other movement after 2010 about people they didn't trust the everything bubble, right? So they're like, yeah, I don't trust Amazon at 70 PE. I don't trust it. You know what I mean? Now they should have trusted it back in 2010, but they didn't, right?
Yeah.
So there's all this money that was just like, I don't trust stocks. I want something tangible. I want some income producing thing. And guess what happened last year? They got their asses handed to them, right?
I said last year, I was like, the value investing crowd, the value throws, get maybe about a good 18 months every 15 years.
Yeah.
Right? So you had all these people talking about value investing is back, value investing is back. And it was like, it was clear to see this is a response to the credit cycle. And as soon as that turns, you're going to get screwed again.
Right.
And that's what happened. What do you think about, because obviously I've been having this debate as well as yourself, about the MSTR trade, where basically he's taking that increased margin PE and turning it into more Bitcoin per share. And obviously,
here's the deal. I think you just have, whenever I see an insider who owns, more than 20% of a stock sell, I don't care what he says. I don't care what rational reason he has for saying, I have this program, I'm doing this. Like, it's always a bad sign. Okay.
Yeah.
It's always a bad sign. And look, and I also think, even if it's not Michael Saylor selling, if it's MSTR selling their own shares to buy more Bitcoin, basically what they're saying is, we think Bitcoin is cheaper than our own shares. Right? Now, if they were somehow borrowing more money at, 1% to do it, great.
That's different.
But they're not anymore, right? Because guess what? Nobody's lending MSTR more money at 1% to buy more Bitcoin.
Yep.
I think they got this money at an absolute
timing was perfect.
The timing was, they could not have gotten those loans if they didn't do it in 2020, or, in 2021. It's not possible. That was the only time on planet Earth where these banks would lend you, these just insane terms, right? So yeah, he did it, but all that money, it's not super long term, by the way, right? So I haven't looked closely at the debt structure, but I know there's some stuff that's coming up like in 12 months, right? So it's going to get rolled over, and it's going to get rolled over at, probably going to be closer to 8% now, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, unless this would be the most fantastic move for a little bit of extra vindication in the thoughts of these people, right? What if they tell Michael Saylor, right, we're going to give you this loan against your Bitcoin, we're going to roll it over at 12%, or you send that Bitcoin to the ETF and we'll lend it to you at 8%.
Okay. Yeah, right? Maybe.
So now MicroStrategy's Bitcoin is now within the BlackRock ETF. That could be an interesting position.
Look, that's a great point, right? That's a great point, right? Because the money is just sitting there at Coinbase. The only problem is sending it to the ETF is a cash. It's a taxable event, right? Yeah. That's the other problem that Michael Saylor has, right? Is you can ding GBTC all you want, but there's this other thing that's a replica of GBTC. It's called MSTR, right?
Is it really?
I mean,
do you think that MSTR? I don't put MSTR on the same level. I put it as tier 1 options for Bitcoin are self-custody in the spot ETFs.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Tier 2 is MSTR miners and everything else that's going on.
I think MSTR is going to trade at a discount to this Bitcoin.
Simply because of the debt, or why do you think that is?
I think if you take so the financial model that I have of MSTRs, take the value of the Bitcoin, right? Subtract the debt, and then add in $1 billion for his business.
For the business, yeah.
Right. And that's the sum of the pieces. Now, I don't see any reason why that sum of the pieces should trade at a premium at this point.
Yeah, no, I agree. The only reason it would do that is if you believed that you wanted to take a long leveraged position. But the point I came out with at that time when I was having that conversation was that if you wanted to take a long leveraged position, as soon as options are out on the ETF, all you would do is liquidate 5% and put it into long dated.
Totally. Right. So, it was the best choice at the time because there was no other choices.
Right.
Now, as of this new world, we're looking at, lots of other choices.
Yeah, I mean, MSTR is down 26% since I started talking about it. So it's
I know.
And I think since you started talking about it as well.
Yeah.
So, and everyone, oh my God, the amount of people that I had shitting on my point about MSTR because Michael Saylor is a savior. I was like, Michael Saylor is one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life.
Right.
Right? But that still doesn't mean that I need to own MicroStrategy.
No.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's an interesting one. By the way, congratulations for pissing off the happy hippies.
Well, look, here's the thing, British. This is my view, okay? It sort of depends on, look, I understand there's a lot of people who think that, Bitcoin is going to solve war and income. It'll equalize all the income among everybody, and it'll be the end of authoritarian regimes. I got news for you. It won't. You know what I mean? That's the reality, okay? Reality is, I've been in El Salvador twice.
What do you think? What do you think of it? Do I? I said I won't go to El Salvador until there's a Marriott or a Four Seasons or a Ritz-Carlton built there.
Well, there's a Hilton right now.
That's not good enough.
Yeah, that's where you get in El Salvador. But look, El Salvador, how much dollars of Bitcoin they have? $200 million.
You mean what? 10 times less than what went in today net, probably.
Right. So I mean, people are like, this is going to become the new Singapore. No, it will not become. It's not going to become the new Singapore, right? The average wage is about $100 a month, minimum wage, right? Like, this is a very, very poor country. 80% of El Salvador does not have bank accounts, right? I mean,
But they have Bitcoin wallets.
They have a Bitcoin wallet with $50 in it, And again, a lot of people look at these metrics like how many Bitcoin wallets are there? Well, okay, yeah, they did create, 3 million Bitcoin wallets with $50 in them. That's what they did. And,
Yeah, El Salvador is an interesting situation because you think about it and you go, okay, it feels like a good testing ground because it's not a Bitcoin standard, right?
No.
Everyone keeps saying El Salvador is not a Bitcoin standard. Firstly, it's on the US dollar standard with a tax-free Bitcoin exchange, basically. That's what's happening here. So it feels like a testing ground to see what would happen. I worry. I spent a lot of time in South America, and I worry what happens when regime changes. Right?
Right.
It could absolutely start as Fidel Castro started in Cuba, and then it could end as Fidel Castro ended in Cuba.
Right.
Same as Maduro in Venezuela, right? Like, I don't know, and especially if you are outwardly shitting on the United States of America while also using the currency, like, at what point do you take it too far and the U.S. just says, okay, you want to play games, let's play games? I don't know, so I worry about what happens there. I think he's done a good job on safety from what did you feel safe when you were there? That's because you were at the Hilton all day. That's why.
Let me put it this way: I would not feel safe roaming the streets of San Salvador at 2 in the morning.
Well, there you go.
Okay. I mean,
again, I wouldn't feel safe rolling the streets of parts of London at 2 a.m. in the morning.
I feel safer.
I'd probably feel safer. You're right. Yeah.
You know, look, it's sort of like when you go to a 7-Eleven in El Salvador, there's a chance that, you know, there's a guard in front of it with a submachine gun. That does not give me the warm and fuzzies, okay?
What do you mean? You're from America. I thought you guys love guns.
We do love guns. We do love guns. But, you know, I like owning them and not so much seeing them in street corners, right?
There you go.
Yeah. So it's like, look, it's just it is a dangerous place. And, you know, look, I'm for these countries. I'm absolutely for him doing what he did, right? I think it's great. But it is, as you said, it's the middle finger to America, right? Yeah. That's what he said, right? It's like,
but
we got
my problem is he keeps doing it, right?
Yeah.
Like, if I ran the empire, a $900 trillion empire, and I saw El Salvador sticking its middle finger up at me with $200 million worth of Bitcoin, this is an easy ant to squash, right? It's like, at what point does it just become too much? And I hope it doesn't. And I hope there's all the best for the people of El Salvador. But we'll see.
But here's where I was going with this. This is my another thing that you said that resonated. It's sort of like, you should do this for yourself or for your family, right?
Right.
Let's just kind of like park the I'm going to save the world, you know, talk a little bit, you know. To me, at the end of the day, it's a trade, okay? And, you know, there's good trades, there's great trades, and there's trades that, you know, there's trades that can make you, right? You know? Yeah. And all you need is one of these trades, and, you know, it can be buying Tesla at the right time, you know, it can be buying, you know, Google at the right time, or it can be buying Bitcoin at the right time, right? So the way I look at it, I see a lot of stars aligning for the next, let's just say the next 5 years of Bitcoin. You know, I think we can get to this $1 million or $500,000 price point. I don't exactly know when, but I do think it's going to come relatively soon. You know, by 2030, I definitely think, right? So, you know, I think if you have, I can't sort of say I believe the same is true for NVIDIA or Apple or, you know, and they may come out with a better version of the Ultra 9, you know, that, you know, I don't know. But, you know, I feel like everything's kind of priced to perfection with these tech stocks, right? I think if I look at real estate, you know, not an asset class that, you know, I find particularly interesting at all right now, you know?
I think it's going to be the worst. I put this out in my video. I think this is going to be, real estate will be the worst performing asset class of 2024. And I'm going to value that by looking at VNQ's performance over this year.
Right.
I think it's done. You know, one of the interesting things that I wanted to actually ask you about, because you mentioned Tom Lee from FundStrat.
Yeah.
And what was fascinating was his presentation in 2018. It was on YouTube. I can't remember which conference it was at. It was one of the first like 3 to 5 presentations I ever watched about Bitcoin after getting orange pilled, reading the Bitcoin Standard. What was it that did it for you?
Well, so I went to this conference that was put on by Chance Barnett. And he started this Bitcoin-friendly bank in Bermuda called Jewel Bank, right? And he invited me and a bunch of other people who were in, at that point, crypto, right? You know, I had built a wallet, so I knew a lot of stuff about crypto. And so I went to this presentation. We all hung out for, 3 days, and we're, talking mainly about really high general asset allocation, Bitcoin, et cetera, right? And he basically had his entire pitch was based on generational. He said
that's exactly what did it for me.
Yeah, so he was like, look, it's all about asset class for a generation, right? And he's like, look, you look at boomers, They were only interested in large cap tech stocks, large cap stocks, the S&P 500, right? Then you look at Gen X, the next generation. They were infatuated with tech stocks, right? Because that's the world that they were growing up. They felt like, you know what, these boomers, ExxonMobil, totally uninteresting. I don't want to own that thing. Johnson & Johnson, no interest. But, you know, can I own Google? Yeah, that's great. You know, I love Google. I'm cool. You know, I own tech stocks. And then the next generation, right, which is millennials, right? That's by far the bigger generation, much bigger than the Gen X in terms of, you know, size. And the values of millennials are very different. Yeah. Because millennials, their number one value is freedom, right? They want freedom to move around. They don't want to talk to a broker. And, you know, they literally, he was citing a poll that people were asked, who would you prefer to talk to? Where would you prefer to go? To your banker or to the dentist? And people are like, I'll choose the dentist, you know? So the idea of coming to your banker, sitting down and, you know, let me give you the stagecoach checking. Let me look in your account. That's very antithetical to most millennials. So they really want to do it themselves. They want to have it on their phones, right? They want to have custody themselves. They do not want to have any intermediary. And they don't want to be tied down with a 30-year mortgage, right? They really don't, you know? So, you know, kind of my generation, we were all like big houses, right? Yeah. You need a big house, right? Because big house is success. Yeah. You know, and big house goes up in value, right? So that was the thinking, right? But millennials, they don't really want that big house in Beverly Hills anymore. That's actually kind of like a negative, right? So what they want is an apartment that they rent, and then, right, and then they can move on.
Yeah,
right?
It was a Prius, now it's a Tesla.
Right, now it's a Tesla, but they don't want commitments. They're commitment phobic, yeah. And they love this idea of this digital asset. It fits the lifestyle, right? So I was just like, oh my God, that is so, like, you just convinced me that. And, you know, I wasn't just one presentation. I hung out with him, I talked to him a lot, you know, and and Bitcoin was at 5,000, you know, but I was like, you know, I gotta take a jump here, you know, like,
what year was this? 2020?
2019, May of 2019, you know, and it was, you know, we just started kind of working our way back. You know, 2018 was just like Craig Wright and all this stuff, right? And then, like, is Bitcoin going to survive? What Bitcoin? You know, is it going to be Bitcoin Cash? We don't know, right? And it was just a disaster. And then 2019, we're just sort of poking our hole. And he made this really great quote. He said, listen, Fred, the only thing that matters, if you're on Wall Street, if this thing's gone 80% down, it's dead man walking. I'm not interested. I said, well, what would it take? He goes, you have to get back to your all-time high. Yeah. That's it, right? So I do think he's right that when we get back to an all-time high, when we cross that thing, that's when the booster rockets get up. That's when Wall Street is going to be like, oh, what did you say? All-time high Bitcoin? Larry Fink approved it? It's in my brokerage account? Yeah. Boom, press buy, right? So that's what I think. I think we've got now the booster rockets have been strapped on. We haven't ignited them yet. But I think we get to an all-time high, and it's almost unlimited how much money can now flow into this stuff, right? It can flow. It doesn't mean it will, but if we get to all-time highs, it can. And all this money in 2020, 2021 was just, people were just looking on the sidelines going, that's just funny money.
It's nothing. When you actually look at it, it's like $25-30 billion in the entire last cycle peak. It's like, this is a drop in.
Well, and a lot of that $25-30 billion, let's be honest, it went into this idea of making 10% at Celsius, right? Or 20% at Terra Luna, right?
Or doing this GBTC arb trade that everyone.
But I mean, forget even, the GBTC arbitrate, right? But like a lot of it was not even based on the idea of investing in Bitcoin, right? It was stable coins with yield. That was like, I can sell that product to people because interest rates are low, right? So I think we're going into something completely different, right? Where we're now going, okay, we got this new asset. It's not tied to yield at all. It's working on its own merits, and so I think we're in a different world, and I think we could get 100 billion no problem this cycle. Maybe 200 billion. You know what I mean? No problem this cycle.
Well, if that happens, then you're looking at a multi-million-dollar Bitcoin price.
I think we're going to get, as I said, so this is my view. I think we're going to have, it may take a little bit of time to go there. Once we get to all-time highs, and the halving obviously is going to help, right? But once we get to that point, then the booster rockets come in. Then people the sheer greed of people just saying, oh, wow, IBIT was the top ETF, top volume.
Can you imagine the prospectus from BlackRock next year? What's the number one best performing ETF on BlackRock? Bitcoin. What's the number one best performing ETF with Fidelity? Bitcoin.
Well, it doesn't even need a prospectus. You just go to their choices. They have like menus, and you just go sort by top performing. Right now it's like some, Indian tech fund in Japan, right? Yeah. In 3 months it's going to be IBIT, Bitcoin. So now people are going to be like, what, am I an idiot for not investing in this class? Look, they were emerging markets. One of my friends was on the cover of Barron's, Guy Elliott, and he ran the Croesus Emerging Markets Fund, at about $1 billion under management in 2000, in the early 2000s, right? Kind of got, once we hit not before then. So he got hit in 1998 with the Russia, this first Russia crisis, right? Russia went down 95%, right? So emerging markets got slammed, right? But like, if you wanted to invest in emerging markets before 2000, you'd have to go to a guy like my friend, and you'd give him money and he would figure out how to put the money in crazy places like Uzbekistan, you know what I mean? Yeah. But now you have the emerging markets fund, right? You have hundreds of these funds, ETFs. So click, Uzbekistan fund, boom, you want the Uzbekistan tech fund or the Uzbekistan mid-cap fund, your choice, right? So like, I guarantee you none of these people buying that thing have ever been to Uzbekistan, or probably couldn't even place it on the map, right? But they're buying. Well, it's been around. It's a thing. It's in the menu, and at some point, I think this year and next year, same's going to happen for Bitcoin. These people are just going to, they're not going to read the white paper. They're going to read the Bitcoin standard. They're not going to read anything. They're just going to look at performance, and they're just going to go, that's it. That's all I need to know. So I think we're going to get this blowout thing, and I think, I've lived through enough of these bull markets, right? So I'd say the one that I really remember the most was the Japan bull market, in 1990. And it was insane, I'd go to Japan, it was just insane. These things they were just trading like, these stocks are numbered, right? Like number 78231, it'd be Tokyo Milk. And people would be like, yeah, Tokyo Milk's worth 10 billion, Like, what do they do? It doesn't matter. It's milk. You drink milk, it's in Tokyo Milk. Great, And so people just got completely enamored in the Japanese market, and it crashed, right? Then we got people completely enamored in .com stocks. It crashed, right? So, and these crashes can be very long, right? They can be, once everybody really loves the asset and it crashes, it can go down for 10 years, That's one thing I've learned. So I think likely, it's not going to happen in a question of cycles, but I think my view is that this thing could be the end of the 4-year cycle. I think we could have like a 6-year bull market, take us to 1 million, take us to 2 million, and then bam. Now that everybody's completely comfortable with the asset, bam, it crashes. And now everybody's like, well, screw that. I need to go into something more reasonable like AI, you know? So I do think we're going to go, you know, I don't think it's a forever trade. My view is this is going to be a great period, you know, a great 4 to 5 years for Bitcoin. And that, honestly, that's all I need, right? That's all I want. I definitely am going to own some till the day I die because I think it's such an amazing asset. But I don't need to own all of it.
So I've said, people have asked me, like, at what point would you start divesting your Bitcoin position? I said, if the 5-year CAGR goes below 25%, that might be a good time for me to start divesting into other things and other passion projects. I don't know what price that would be at. So what is it for you? Like, are you looking at a certain price, or are you looking at like, what is the metric that tells you, okay, now is the time to divest a little bit?
Look, one guy I follow, I think he's pretty good, is this guy, Bob Lucas. And Bob sort of, you know, I've been sort of thinking about this, like, long bear market, which we also have for gold, by the way, right? Look at gold in 2011. All these gold bugs, they're crawling out of their shells right now. But look, gold was at 1850 in 2011. 2011. Okay, that was 13 years ago. Okay, so you're okay. So you're there. So you know. So we're at 2000. Great. We've gone up what? 10%, 15% in a decade. You know, and in the interim, there was the drawdowns were brutal, right? We were down 50%, right? So, look, I think you have to separate the emotion, the love for the asset, the love for the Bitcoin story with, like, look, if you can take life-changing money off the table, take life-changing money off the table, right? I think that's you should always never forget to sell some of it, you know, never forget to sell.
But don't you think it'd be, I mean, like, for me, I think it'd be much better. There's a lot of people ask me that sell question. I say, I've been in markets for 18 years. I know how to generate liquidity on assets that I own without selling them.
Right.
And so, you know, I don't know whether it justifies selling the hardest asset humanity's ever created when you can generate liquidity in other ways.
It depends how old you are, right? So
that's true too.
Yeah. If you're your generation, yeah, you know what? You can play around with a little bit. For me, you know, look, this thing gets to $1 million. I'm not saying I'm out of there, but I'm half of it's out off the table. You know what I mean? And you know what? I'll be buying random pieces of real estate. I might buy a Picasso or something. You know, who knows?
Hopefully prime real estate, those single family homes.
Yeah, exactly. You know, but look, you know, I definitely think we have something. But the other thing is, I don't think that many people are going to get the message. I think we can yell all the time. You can yell, we'll get to 1 Bitcoin. How many people do you think you've convinced to get to 1 Bitcoin?
Listen, I've been saying this for so long. Like, all of us can shout as much as we want. People are not, like, the majority of people are not going to hear this. It just is what it is.
They don't.
They'll end up working.
I can't get my brother to get to 1 Bitcoin. He's a wealthy guy, you know. I can't get him to. He will buy a Malaysian prison stock before he buys 1 Bitcoin. You know, like, I mean, I swear, like, you know, and look. On the other hand, you know, some people see it, some people don't, but I don't think it's a lot. So, and you know, it's not going to be most people in El Salvador. Not going to be most people in El Salvador get to 1 Bitcoin.
You know, I've been saying, I feel like rich people need Bitcoin more than poor people, but poor people need Bitcoin adoption more than rich people.
That's true.
Right? Like, if they had the ability to earn money in an asset that nobody could take from them, I think that's a pretty valuable thing. Even if their savings rate was low, even like despite all of that, I think that that becomes extremely valuable. But I think that's why my YouTube channel started taking off, because everyone wants to just help poor people. Like, I don't understand it. Like, you want to help the people that have generated the least amount of economic success. What about the people like my parents who moved to the United Kingdom, added value to the country, added value to the system, followed all the rules and everything else, and still got fucked over because their property portfolio should have been worth 50% more than it is? You know, no one was talking to those people.
Yeah, no, it's true. Look, I just saw this stat today. I pushed that 92% of stocks and mutual funds in America are owned by 10% of America. 10%. Yeah. So, look, the reality is most people actually don't have assets. They don't. Like, most Americans live paycheck to paycheck. That's it. They spend everything they get. And so, you know, it's kind of an academic thing, really, you know, whether they're DCAing it into Bitcoin or something else, it's not really going to make a difference. You know, even if Bitcoin goes to $1 million, it's not really going to make a difference, right? But where it can make what?
It could help adoption.
It'll help adoption, right? It'll you know, we're going to get legitimized, and it'll help adoption in those other countries too, right? Because, you know, if they start seeing the price, when I went to El Salvador, Bitcoin was at 50,000, right? I went back 4 months later, Bitcoin was at 30,000. You know, people weren't going, "Hey, Fred, welcome back." They were like, "The fuck?" You know? Fred, you told us to buy this thing.
You're from America. I thought you were going to fix this.
Yeah. They weren't so happy when I came back the second time, right? And then, of course, you know, then when it got down to 16,000, they weren't even returning my calls anymore. You know, like, you know, so reality is I don't see that many people actually taking advantage of this opportunity. So I think it's going to be a small amount of people get very rich, do very well for themselves, you know. And, you know, I kind of just feel like I'm fortunate because I kind of discovered it, you know. Maybe it was Tom Lee. I don't know what the catalyst was. I don't know. I must have been in the mood to listen to Tom Lee, you know, when he kind of did that. But, like, you know, I think people like you or me could easily have missed it, right? We could have, if something didn't go we missed one conversation somewhere, we would have missed it completely, right?
Yep.
And, you know, the other argument would be like, well, there's all these cryptos, you know, it's slower than Solana. Maybe it's like AOL and there's going to be, you know, Yahoo after. Like, you know, so there's a lot of reasons why I think it's just kind of like, this is going to be a great trade for a small amount of people. And, you know, I think if you're serious about this, I think the other thing you have to ask yourself is, how many trades like this are you going to see in your lifetime? These things come around very few and far between.
It's a generational trade. Like, you know, I was very lucky in the sense that my first recession in business was 2008. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm probably not going to see another one of them. If I'm lucky, I'll get to see another one of those because they come around every 70 to 80 years.
Well, okay, but still, you're going to see some great moves. Look, I saw, for me, when I was probably a little younger than you even, Microsoft, right? I made a bunch of money. This was like 1992, okay? I was one of the highest paid people on Wall Street in 1992, okay? Top 20. You know, I was like in things like Fred Krueger, the highest paid people, Fred Krueger, right? Made a lot of money, got a big, huge bonus, right? Now, my wife at the time said, why don't we just put it in Microsoft? And I was like, no, look, trust me. I'm the financial guy. I know. Microsoft's completely over. Things trading at a 35 PE. You think I'm stupid enough to put it in? No, that would have been 100x. A 100x from that, right? So I saw there've been these things, right? That, you know, I saw, I missed, you know, and, you know, some of them I got a little piece of, but, you know, the FANG stocks, Apple in 2008 when they introduced the iPhone. You know, I bought Apple stock, you know. It was a great trade. Now, you know what I was? Too stupid. I sold it. It doubled. I sold it. Okay, I didn't realize it would go up another 25x after that.
That's what I did with Bitcoin for the first time. I was sitting with a best friend of mine, sitting in our favorite lounge at the time in London, smoking a cigar, looking at this thing, and it was like going up, going up. Like, this is a complete and utter scam. But we could probably make some money from it. Yeah, so we bought 20 Bitcoin each, right?
Yeah.
It doubled in 2 weeks. We sold the whole position each and paid for cigars for 6 months.
Right.
If only we held on to it, right? Like it's just we always have these things, but yeah.
I mean, I think it's like, but you have to ask yourself, what's your second best idea? Well, if you don't have a really great second best idea, like what's been not even your second best idea now, what's been your best ideas over the last 10 years, you know? And I think for me, Bitcoin's I tell everybody, this is my best idea. They're like, Fred, you're always got these good ideas and stuff. And I said, I have one idea right now, it's Bitcoin. Not to say that I'm not going to have another idea down the road. You know, maybe OpenAI goes public in 3-4 years. And maybe that's the next idea. I don't know. You know what I mean? But right now, I don't have an idea that I think can do 10x from here with, you know, reasonable certainty, you know.
It's the same thing. It's also the same. I'm assuming for you, it's also, you know, the reason why you started tweeting and making videos and stuff like that is because there's nothing also better. There's no better idea, and there's nothing more important as well. Like it's just, what else are you going to talk about?
Well, part of it is, I think, we're also talking to ourselves, right?
100%.
You know, we are trying to convince ourselves, like, am I stupid here, or is this thing just great? You know. So I think part of it is just like, you see this thing, it's so amazing. You look at the number, you do this stuff, and you're like, you know, I'm going to make a lot of money here, you know. And so you really kind of want to say to people, okay, prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. You have some. I'm up for listening. You know, if you can tell me why Satoshi's coins are going to move, or why they're going to, you know, forbid this thing, or they're going to cut down, make laws. I'm listening. I'm very interested in that, right? But for me, it's like I have this huge bet on right now, and you know, I've had it on for a while, and I want to talk through it with other people, just so I'm comfortable, you know, with the ramifications of the legal stuff. And today I feel like we made a major step, you know, that's going to make me much more comfortable, right? Yeah. The fact that this, not only BlackRock, but the fact that Gary Gensler has okayed this thing, you know, it's going to be really hard. You know, Elizabeth Warren, you know, Bob Burnett he had that picture of the girl after the Trump election who was just screaming, you know, that woman. And she goes, that's Elizabeth Warren right now. You know, like, no, you know. And I think, you know, this is going to be hard. You can't reverse this. You're not going to be able to reverse this. So, you know, I definitely feel like, you know, this is like we just notched our way up a little bit in terms of legitimacy, in terms of, you know, now the price may go down, but the underlying value of Bitcoin has been improved by this event substantially, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Nothing to disagree with that. I got a question for you. Yeah. What's up with that NFT behind you guys?
Oh, that's a funny story. That's a friend of mine who he bought that thing for me as a gift, and he's like, look, it's kind of, we were joking about NFTs, you know, that being sort of overpriced, and he goes, I'm going to get you the most expensive NFT copy available. I'm going to pay $10 for it. I'm going to frame it. I'm going to give it to you. And I was like, you know what? Copy paste, great. And you know, I'm not trying to say I own it or anything, but to me, it's just like a symbol that, you know, all of this stuff just lives in your mind, right?
Yeah, how ridiculous the world can get.
Right. It's just like, you know, I'm not saying all NFTs are bad. I actually think NFTs are going to be kind of cool, but
really?
Yeah, I do. Look, here's the thing. It's kind of what I show some people, like I put my dog as an ordinal on Bitcoin, and I got to tell you, you know, you can say whatever you want, but it's just like art. It's in the mind of the beholder. My dog's 11 years old. You saw her walking around, this Australian Shepherd. But like, you know, great dog, but she's 11. She's probably got 2 more years left, right? So to me, having her on Bitcoin, it's kind of like, okay, well, I love Bitcoin. I love my dog. I'd love to have the dog forever on Bitcoin. And I show people and they're like, you can do that? How do I do that? You know what I mean? And so I definitely think there's something there that's, you know, that we haven't tapped into. And I'm not just saying people are going to put their dogs on Bitcoin, but I just definitely think that there's something to the idea of saving something on Bitcoin forever, you know? And it may be, you know, it may be I love you, it may be whatever, you know? It may be a contract, it may be something. But I just love this idea of Bitcoin as sort of a data layer. Yeah. And I have no idea where that's going. But I know it's a thing because half of the transactions of Bitcoin right now are ordinals. So, you know, the data person in me is like, that's something is happening now with ordinals, right? Now, are there scams and tokens and all? Yeah, it's meaningless, right? But those also exist everywhere, you know, like Dogecoin. Does that make any sense to you? No, right? No. It's just, you know, it has a dog.
I would say to people, I'm like, if you wanna speculate, if you wanna build, I'm a capitalist, so everyone has the right to build what they want to build. Everyone has the right to make and lose money. Like, whatever you want to do, but do it on a solid base layer. And that solid base layer is Bitcoin. Like, anyone thinking that they want to go and build, you know, NFTs on Ethereum, which has a flawed underlying system, right? That's stupid. But you want to have some fun on Bitcoin, go for it. Like, that's what.
Right, but also like art. I mean, look, there's some really cool new art that's happening. Like, I have some art. You know, I own some physical art. And I got to tell you, like, the art that's happening now, this generative art, is arguably the most interesting stuff that's ever happened since Warhol. You know what I mean? Like,
I don't know shit about art. So
okay, well, I'm just telling you, I actually do know. So, like, if you look at that OK thing, that's an Ed Ruscha right there. That's, you know, so this is like a kind of main artist. This little guy is an NFT, right? That I printed out. I bought this guy from this Japanese artist, right? And it's an NFT, and I paid like $20 for it, right? It's a really cool NFT. It's a very cool piece of art. And I said, I want to print it out. And he's like, yeah, I'll only give you the high-res version. I can print it out. So, but this piece lives on Bitcoin. This is a Bitcoin art, you know? So I'm like, I'm into it, you know, like
you're a tech guy, like you understand, and you're a tech guy and an art guy, so I can understand why that makes
sense. So it's a
sense.
personal thing. I'm not trying to. I do think it's sort of like this. If you want to make money, there's one trade right now. Right. One trade. That's it. Yeah. One trade, Bitcoin. Now, you know, podcasting is not making me any money. Yeah, I'm not here for podcasting.
People asking me, like, how much money do you make doing it? I'm like, nothing. Like, my channel's not even monetized. Like, what are we talking about? I've had, do you know how much money I've had offered? Like $2.5, $3.5. The highest was like $4,000 for a 90-second thing to talk about some shitcoin. And I was like,
you don't want to do the same thing that Pomp did and a bunch of other people, and then you're like, now a word from our sponsor, FTX.
I think like I said, you know, I wanted to see more people who don't need sponsors talking about Bitcoin. Right. And I wanted to see more people who had real life experience and didn't need bookshelves full of books and cameras and studios and shit like that to talk about, you know, a thing that affects everyone in the world. And you, yourself, and I can do a video every single day for the next 8 years without making a single penny from Bitcoin, and it's not going to make any difference to the cigars that I smoke.
No.
Right? And I think that's the huge thing that's coming this cycle. I think the news readers are done. Anyone who's just focusing on reading the news to try and build a content business around Bitcoin is done. And this is great because this new class of buyer is going to demand a new class of educator, of person.
Right. Well, that's what I think. I think that's why you're having success, and that's why. Look, I had no interest in Twitter until like December 1st. Yeah. And I just randomly made a video. And I saw some of your videos, saw some other things, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to say my thoughts. I just no agenda, nothing. You know, didn't have a mic or anything. You didn't either, right?
No.
You were like...
The camera was resting on my laptop, fucking shaking backwards and forwards for like the first 3 months.
So yeah, so like I was like, I don't care if it's like garage style, whatever. It enhances the value of it. I'm fine with that. So yeah, I mean, look, I think that's a little bit different, and I don't have an agenda like I'm not working for Swan Bitcoin or or Kraken or something. Like I'm not saying, oh, by the way, this wallet is sponsoring me now. So. I don't think that. I think that content is getting a little old. You know what I mean? Like it's just like I really don't want to hear about. I want to hear about money. I want to hear about how you can make money. How are the markets? What do we really think is happening? I love this guy James. With his some of his numbers on the multiplier and stuff like that. Van Pratten.
He's done that young man. I don't know how old he is. I'm going to call him a young man because he looks like
he's a young man.
He has done an amazing job with that multiplier effect and taking the data and trying to chart it out for people to visualize it for people to see. Yeah, I'm very proud of him. I haven't spent much time talking to him, but just from afar, I'm very, very proud of him and what he's doing there.
Yeah, so look, I mean, that's my thing. It's like I want to learn more about. I don't really care this much about some technical thing like some new way to like some random thing that's happening that may happen in 4 years when they fork Bitcoin and do drive chains or something. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. It's like they may never do drive chains. I don't know. Whatever. I don't want to waste my time speculating on these things because I don't even know if these things may be science fiction, right? I don't know. Volcano bonds. I'm not throwing my money in a volcano. I'm not interested, But I feel like they're trying to fill the void with this stuff, but then the ETF comes out and nobody's talking about it. And I'm like, what are you guys thinking, guys?
When BlackRock filed for that application, literally that week, I was like, this is done. This is BlackRock. I don't understand why everyone's so calm about this. This is BlackRock. This is not, some crypto Galaxy Invesco fucking whatever. This is BlackRock.
Right.
And they filed for it now. And then certain reports started coming out. I said Bitcoin will now be ESG friendly as soon as they filed that thing. 2 weeks later, KPMG report is ESG friendly.
Of course.
What did you think was going to happen? So yeah, it's a wild ride, and it's just started. Literally, it's just started today.
Well, Hodl, let's end it up. But listen, we're gonna take this. We'll have more of these down the road, whatever.